Hello hunters, and welcome to my hammer guide. I will provide everything you need to know to succeed with hammer in Monster Hunter Now. Hammer is a weapon that has big hits but also remains relatively mobile for a heavy weapon. Either through powerful combo enders or charging up very powerful strikes, hammer thrives off of doing big burst damage. In addition, hammer has a win more strategy where hits to the monster's face will eventually stun the monster. Thus playing well and focusing the face will reward you with opportunities to do even more damage. The biggest challenges with hammer are gauging your opportunities and not overcommitting. Hammer's strongest combos require you to remain stationary for a big payoff final hit. Certain attacks lock you in animation for a long time and do not allow you to dodge, which can be very costly. Understanding when to commit and when to stay mobile to avoid attacks are the key ways to succeed with hammer. So then let's go over all the different attacks and combos that you can do on hammer. Hammer has three major enders that do a lot of damage: the upswing, the big bang finisher, the charged big bang, and of course the special spinning bludgeon. The upswing is the finisher for most of your basic combo starters. If you are close to the monster and did not just roll, tapping the screen will start the overhead smash. Tapping again will be followed by another overhead smash that is slightly stronger, then finally the upswing. If you have rolled and are still in range of the monster, tapping the screen will perform the side smash. This is a quick attack that then leads into the overhead smashes, which will end with the upswing. Another way is if you are a little far from the monster and tap the screen, your hunter will do a little running attack. Tap again to do another quick hit, which will then lead into the overhead smashes. Lastly, the level 1 charge attack will also lead to the overhead smashes. If you tap and hold, your hunter will charge and move towards the monster. Releasing this before the second time you glow will perform a charged side smash. Tapping again will do another attack. This is basically a stronger version of the previous running attack. Continuing to tap the screen after this will lead into the overhead smashes, which will go into the upswing. One thing worth noting is that the level 1 charge does the same damage whether you glow once or simply start charging and release. The overhead smashes into the upswing is one of the best combos, but do be careful as these individual attacks are high commitment and you will not be able to roll out of them. The other major combo is the Big Bang combo. This combo has 2 hits where you bounce your hammer off the monster and then end with a big damage finisher. Something worth noting is that if any of the first 2 hits miss, then the combo will end because you did not bounce off the monster. There are 2 ways to start the Big Bang combo. The first is continuing to tap the screen after an upswing. This is the least practical way to do it because you need to complete a whole nother combo just to start it, but there are some situations when you might use it this way. What is more likely is starting the Big Bang after the level 2 charged uppercut. Tapping and holding the screen to charge and release after 2 levels will perform an uppercut. This attack is quite strong, has great reach, and continuing to tap the screen afterwards will start the Big Bang. The full Big Bang combo, especially when combined with the uppercut, is the strongest combo you can perform. The last attack is a level 3 charged Big Bang. Charging up to the 3rd level, your hunter will perform a big wind-up attack. This is the strongest single hit that you can perform on hammer. Hammer also has 2 kinds of evade attacks. After successfully performing a perfect evade, tapping the screen will instantly perform an upswing. This is quite powerful if you perfect evade and are still in front of the monster. If instead, after a perfect evade, you tap and hold, you will automatically start a level 2 charge, making a level 2 or level 3 charge attack a lot quicker. Finally, Hammer's special attack, the Spinning Bludgeon. Your hunter will spin to win and end with a huge damage upswing. Like other special attacks, you will be invulnerable to damage during this attack, so it is especially good in a pinch to avoid an attack or to use it during a monster's attack so you can deal damage to the monster when you otherwise wouldn't have been able to. Alright, let's start talking about general gameplay. Lock-on, in my opinion, is mandatory on hammer. You need to be able to lock onto the monster's head so you can build up the stun. As I mentioned before, as you build up more hits to the monster's head, you will eventually stun the monster. This is signified by stars kind of sparkling above the monster's head. Sometimes the monster will not stun right away if it's in the middle of an animation, but if you see the stars, it will fall over afterwards. So let's break down engagements with the monster into 2 different categories. Big openings where you can perform a long combo, and shorter opportunities that are between dodging attacks. Generally, if you have an opportunity when the monster is doing nothing due to something like a stun or a topple, if you are in range of the monster, the overhead slams into the upswing is the way to go. Very quick, efficient damage, and if the attack opportunity is very long, you can start the Big Bang. If the monster is not in range, charging is a good idea. Level 2 is good if you don't have a lot of time or can follow up with a full or partial Big Bang. Level 3 is great if you have enough time to charge and land the hit, but still have time to avoid the next attack. Keep in mind there is a long delay before being able to move after the charged Big Bang. Part breaks are a unique opportunity to deal more damage to the monster while the monster is reacting to it. Part breaks appear to scale to specific HP percentages, so it is possible to plan out your part breaks if you are confident on the thresholds. Every monster has different animations, so what you should do after each one will depend, and I'll cover these when we go into discussing each matchup. Responding after dodging attacks is kind of the name of the game. Each of your options will really depend on your situation. Immediately after a roll, if you are in range, you can do a side smash. The side smash is your fastest attack when you are close to the monster, so it's a decent choice if you are very cautious but want to get a quick hit in. Should it become a good opportunity, you can choose to commit to the overhead slams and to the upswing. If you wait half a second after rolling, you can instead start with the overhead slam and skip the side smash to do more damage. This will get you to the upswing quicker, which is sometimes relevant. You can also quick charge a side smash combo. Remember, for this, you do not need to reach the first glow. Simply starting the charge and releasing will do the same damage. Going through the combo all the way up until the upswing is one of the strongest combos starting from a quick attack. You can also charge a level 2 uppercut. This choice gets better as you have more points in the focus armor skill, which increases your charge rate. The uppercut deals a lot of damage, has really good reach, and is sometimes mandatory to stay on the monster. In addition, the follow-up hit is the Big Bang, which also has pretty good reach. So this 1-2 punch is quite effective. Just be careful and don't be too greedy with the Big Bang. Know your limits. As you might be able to tell by now, the charge attacks are quite good. The level 2, as I've said, is very effective, but also if while tapping and holding you swipe in a direction, you can cancel the charge and perform a roll. So charging allows you to perform powerful attacks, but still gives you the option to evade as needed. Alright, let's talk about builds. Before going any further, I want to mention that the information here is as of the initial launch of the game. We are expecting new monsters, biomes, equipment, and even decorations. So this information is expected to become dated, so check out the channel for more information if you're here much later than the release of the video. So Hammer, like every weapon in this game, is split between raw status and element. Element is equally powerful on all weapons in Monster Hunter now, and I have a different video talking about that. So getting a big, powerful element weapon is quite good on Hammer and would be considered the meta. But I think for progression of the early-late game of 6 and 7 stars, raw builds are the way to go. I think a good raw build is a good idea to set you up to be able to start farming element sets. Builds in Monster Hunter now are pretty straightforward, since there isn't a lot of armor in the game yet, and there are no decorations in the game. So then first, let's go over some armor skills that are more specific to Hammer and why you might want to use them. First, lock on. Very important skill on Hammer so that you can focus on the head for stuns. I've talked about this already. Next, focus. This skill allows you to charge your attacks faster. Because charge attacks are quite good, focus is a great skill to have in your set. That being said, I did try maxing out focus and it wasn't as effective as I had thought. A lot of Hammer's damage come from its long combos, and focus doesn't really affect those. I do think focus is very good because it allows quicker access to charge attacks, which makes engaging the monster easier, but I don't think it's a priority 1 skill over some of the very powerful damage armor skills. Next, Slugger. Slugger increases the stun you apply on your attacks. For the most part, I have not found this to be too valuable yet, and it's mostly because Slugger is only available on the Diablos legs and the chest. I do think there is potential for Slugger to allow the opportunity to play for 2 stuns in a hunt. However, as we will see soon, the body and leg slots have much better options at the moment. There is also the problem that part breaks and flinches end the stun status, so getting the stun sooner can actually be a problem if you have not gotten the head break yet. So what hammer should you use? For raw and status, the Diablos hammer seems to be the strongest. The raw on this weapon is massive, however Diablos only appears in the desert, and it is among the hardest monsters in the game. This is something to be aware of if you want to heavily invest in this weapon. I personally made this choice, but it is a lot of work to chase down those Diablos parts. Alternative weapons and weapons you can have before you unlock Diablos are the Pukei Pukei Poison, the Girros Paralysis, or the Kulu Affinity Hammer. The Kulu Hammer is strictly a worse raw hammer than the Diablos Hammer, but you may be able to upgrade it a lot easier since Kulu can spawn anywhere and is relatively easy to hunt. Pukei Poison is pretty powerful, especially if the target is weak to poison. You may find that it is lacking though on some of the more poison resistant targets. Lastly, Girros Paralysis. I personally use this until switching to Diablos. I think it is also a pretty viable choice. Paralysis works really well with Hammer because you can both paralyze and stun the monster. In the very early game, I recommend the Kulu Head for lock-on, the Jagras Body for Rising Tide. Rising Tide gives 30 attack every 25 seconds, which is pretty massive in the early game. Use whatever gloves, there aren't really great options. Pukei can give poison attack, and Tobi can give evade extender, which doesn't hurt. For the waist, Pukei for poison attack, or Girros for paralysis, depending on what you're using. And lastly, Kulu legs are pretty good for critical eye, until you can get the Jyuratodus legs for focus. Once you complete the main story and start the beginning of the end game, this is my recommended set that you can work towards. The Pukei Pukei head for focus and health boost, or the Rathalos head for attack boost. I think this will depend on your preferences with focus. The 2 attack boost on the Rathalos head is pretty relevant for a long time and will be a pretty big damage boost in the early late game. The Rathalos body has weakness exploit 1, which gives 20% affinity to weak zones, so this is a very powerful skill just for 1 point. The Rathian gloves are here just for lock-on. The burst doesn't really come up all that much on Hammer unless you use a special spinning bludgeon. The Rathalos waist is used here for the focus. Lastly, the Jyuratodus legs. If you can upgrade this to grade 6, it will give 2 focus. I think this is a fantastic piece on Hammer. It is worth mentioning that if you don't feel like you need focus, you can use the Kulu legs instead for critical eye. I personally prefer focus, but this is an option if you find that you do not. Eventually, in the very late game, you'll want to invest into element, and it is pretty straightforward on Hammer. At the moment, there's only one of each kind of element hammer, and no ice or dragon hammer. The 3 available hammers are Tobi Kadachi for thunder, Jyuratodus for water, and Anjanath for fire. For the water set, the priority is to get the water attack 5. So we use the Kulu Yaku head for the critical eye and lock-on, the Jyuratodus body for water attack 1, the Jyuratodus gloves for 2 water attack, the Rathalos waist for focus, and the Jagras legs for 2 water attack. Both the Jyuratodus gloves and the Jagras legs will need to be upgraded to grade 6 in order to get 2 water attack on each of them. This set is very demanding on Jyuratodus parts, especially because of the hammer. However, against the correct target, this set has the highest damage potential on Hammer while still having lock-on in the set. For Fire, there are 2 builds, the Fire Attack 3 with lock-on or the Fire Attack 5 with no lock-on. The no lock-on set includes the Anjanath head for 2 fire attack, the Rathalos body, the Anjanath hands for 2 fire attack, the Rathalos waist for focus and 1 fire attack, and the Jyuratodus legs for 2 points into focus. The set with lock-on just switches the Anjanath helmet for the Kulu head. The last 2 points of fire attack provide 300 extra attack, which is massive, and I think it's difficult to give that up for lock-on. Luckily, lock-on isn't as powerful in some of the fire matchups, and I will get into those later in the video. Lastly, for thunder, I recommend the Pukei head or the Wrath head just like in the raw sets, the Tobi Kadachi body for thunder attack, the Rathian gloves for lock-on and burst, the Tobi waist for 2 thunder attack, and the Jyuratodus legs for 2 focus. It is not currently possible to get Thunder Attack 5, but I do expect that we will see that when we see Zinogre later on this year. Some honorable mentions are the Paolumu waist and hands, or the Legiana body and head for Divine Blessing. Divine Blessing occasionally reduces the damage you take, which can be pretty important for extending your play sessions. These don't have any direct synergies with Hammer, but it could be a decent choice to help you take less damage so you use less potions. Alright, so let's get into showing some gameplay and tips for every monster. For the Great Jagras, there's a large benefit for hitting the stomach, however it's not possible to lock onto it. Ironically, the first monster is one that I do not use lock on for the beginning. I aim to do charge uppercuts aimed at the body, and I try to hit the part break when I'm on the Jagras' right or front, so when it falls over, I can do the big bang on the stomach or the face. Because you don't use lock-on for the beginning, I think you can get away with the Fire Attack 5 set here, since lock-on doesn't help focus on the stomach. Alternatively, I think you can go for the face first to get the stun, and then removing lock-on to break the stomach is also a good way to go about it. For Kulu, at any level of focus, you can always start with a level 3 charged Big Bang. From there, if it's a particularly high level Kulu, going straight into the Spinning Bludgeon is a good idea. You want to get in as much damage as you can before it pulls out the rock. You need to be very patient and careful with the attacks that you use when the rock is out, along with dropping lock-on as needed. Avoid any side smashes as it will likely cause you to bounce off the rock. Hitting an uppercut into one big bang hit is pretty good because if Kulu starts digging for the rock, you can complete the combo. Usually you have to wait for Kulu to break or throw the rock unless you break the head or hands. However, with hammer, it is also possible to stun Kulu to drop the rock. Pukei Pukei is a pretty straightforward matchup. It is largely dodge and then respond. However, some attacks have a much shorter delay, so choosing the correct attack and not overcommitting is important. Getting poisoned is really rough, so it's best to play cautiously. I personally like to roll to its sides between attacks and either do overhead slams or an uppercut depending on how much time I have. Uppercuts build up a lot of stun, which will give you a great opportunity to do a big combo. Landing the head break on Pukei will make it step back pretty far. If you broke with an uppercut, you can sometimes hit the wing with the follow-up big bang, but consider moving closer or charging after a part break. For Barroth, despite being able to break the crown with hammer, Barroth takes by far the most damage when targeting its forearms. Target the forearms and try to get charge attacks or combos on them, and you will likely get damage on the head anyway for the stun. Barroth has attacks that are pretty easy to roll out of the way of, but also will sometimes charge really far away. I found it's not too bad to chase after it and just release the level 3 charge. Not an ideal hit zone, but good enough damage when it is running away from you. I think the Great Girros can be pretty tough early on, and it's a hard lesson on how not to overcommit on hammer. Getting paralyzed often spells a feint, and Girros, unlike other monsters, can have a very short delay between all of its attacks, so any overcommit and it's over. So be very careful for the most part, as long combos will not work unless you part break or stun Girros. Just patiently work your way to that stun, and then go in for that big damage. For the face break, Girros doesn't really move all that much for the part break, so you can't just continue that combo for even more damage. For Tobi Kadachi, the part that takes the most damage is a tail, and a tail break can also drop the rarity 5 material, so I have found it is easier to just focus a tail for Tobi. Be careful of the tail flip by just rolling to the side. The tail break threshold is pretty low, which opens up opportunities for more damage. In addition, for more difficult Tobi encounters, you will likely get Tobi to enter its charged form, but a tail break will knock Tobi out of it, leaving a decent amount of time to keep hitting Tobi. In this case, I try to time the tail break to be just after Tobi charges up. Rolling back to then be in front of Tobi makes Tobi's attacks very easy to dodge by rolling to the side and then going for the tail again. Be careful overcommitting to the tail flip, as it is quite dangerous, but it is predictable. You can use a spinning bludgeon to attack through the tail flip for even more damage. Paolumu's attacks on the ground are relatively easy to avoid. It is when it is in the air that it is more dangerous. When it is in the air, you have a massive target to hit. Overhead slams, uppercuts, and big bang hits are all good to pile on that damage. Getting the neck pouch to break will bring Paolumu down, which you can then work towards a stun. While in the air, Paolumu has several attacks that slam the ground below it, so carefully roll back for those, and roll to the side for the wind tornadoes and when it charges at you. For Anjanath, there is a pretty straightforward script. Work on the leg until you break it, then go all in on the face. While on the side, the attacks are relatively easy to avoid as you work towards that leg break. Once you do get the leg break, Anjanath will fall over. Switch lock onto the face and combo all the way to the big bang. I don't advise to do the final big bang hit as you will likely miss or get hit. The major thing here is that you will likely get a stun or break the head or both. Anjanath is the only monster currently that will try to attack you after a head break. Just wait and roll away from the attack, then charge and release an uppercut to start the big bang. Anjanath just kinda stands there after this retaliation to the part break. Rathian can be a pretty tedious monster to take down, and you will see that this is a theme for the flying monsters. Rathian's attacks are fairly easy to read, however. For the most part, you can side roll most of the attacks on the ground. The most dangerous attack is a tail flip. I try to make space when avoiding it so that my uppercut will hit the face. Be aware that Rathian can do a quick second tail flip, so do not overcommit after the first one. Rathian does lean very far back after a head break, so try to land the break while very close to it so you can hit the wing afterwards. Patience is key here. Read the attacks and retaliate accordingly. Rathian is a very punishing monster for careless mistakes. Jyuratodus is pretty straightforward, but has a couple of tricky attacks to avoid. The main one is its swimming attack. Typically, you can just side roll an attack like this, however, Jyuratodus' entire body is a hitbox here, so you may also need to roll backwards to avoid the rest of its body. Once you remove the mud from Jyuratodus' head, you will do massive damage to it. Stunning or breaking the head will pop Jyuratodus out of the water, giving continued opportunities to do good damage. When Jyuratodus dives under, be sure to roll away far enough that the splash doesn't hit you when it lands. After this attack, Jyuratodus will just stand there for quite a while, so it's a good opportunity to commit to an attack. Legiana is a pretty challenging matchup on Hammer. Legiana has very wide attacks that travel in a line, but also attacks in a circle around it. On top of that, there are some attacks that are relatively quick too, so you need to be especially careful on when to commit. I like to use uppercuts when it is flying to try and stun Legiana to bring it down, but also poison and paralysis are strong options here, as both will keep Legiana on the ground. Paralysis for obvious reasons, but when Legiana is poisoned, it is unable to fly. It really takes some time to learn its attacks and tells, and it's among the hardest fights on Hammer. Speaking of difficult, Diablos is the most difficult monster on Hammer. What makes it especially bad on Hammer is that there is no Ice Hammer currently in the game, so there is no element weapon to take advantage of for that extra damage. However, paralysis is a pretty decent choice because Diablos does get paralyzed a lot easier than other monsters. Diablos is a tremendously punishing encounter even for the slightest mistake. Not just because it will almost always one-shot you, but also because the wrong choice of attack can cause you to miss Diablos and not make the timer. So I'll do a full walkthrough of the full fight since Diablos Hammer is quite good and it may be a target you seek to farm. So Diablos will always start out with 2 attacks. I always try to retaliate with the level 2 charge uppercut. Hits to Diablos' chin do big damage, but hits to the horns will not, so attacks from below are quite good. In addition, starting with a spinning bludgeon is a good idea to build stun, but also so that you can do a second one later on in the encounter. After 2 attacks, Diablos will always start digging. You might be able to sneak in an extra hit, but do not start panic rolling. I wait about a second for the dig to begin, and then roll back once or twice. Diablos chooses where he will pop up right before he starts moving towards you, so if he stands still for a second, then start rolling backwards, it'll be no problem. This gives time to prepare another uppercut to the face as he's coming out. As long as you hit him with the uppercut early enough, you can always follow up with one hit of the Big Bang. Just one hit though, you need to be prepared to dodge the next hit right away. At this point, you should be pretty close to having the KO, or have gotten the first horn break. Horn breaks on Diablos are quite annoying because it swings its head all over the place. I found the most consistent way to hit Diablos during the horn break is again to charge an uppercut, as it is accurate and has good reach. After 2 more total attacks since the dig, Diablos will simply jump back and stand there for a moment. The jump back is important. If this is the second attack after the dig, I always start charging another attack right away to chase Diablos. This is a fantastic opportunity to deal a lot of damage, so be prepared for it. Shortly after this wait though, Diablos will roar. Ideally, you have built up enough special from stalling Diablos with horn breaks and KOs that you can use a spinning bludgeon to attack through this roar. From here, Diablos will do 2 more attacks and then dig again, at which point you will likely have run out of time if you have not defeated him yet. Of course, this isn't the only way to do it, but I do hope it at least helps you with Diablos. One final thing worth mentioning is if you do enough damage to Diablos to cause a flinch or a part break while it is digging, it will get stuck in a hole, where you can capitalize with big damage. Rathalos can also be pretty tough, but largely has pretty predictable attacks. It'll be very similar to Rathian, except there are no tail flips, but a couple of other attacks to watch out for instead. When it is about to start flying, it'll often shoot fire to cover a relatively large area in front of it. Beware of this and get out of the way. The biggest concern while Rathalos is flying is its sweeping fire breath. This will hit you if you are in melee range and in front of it. It is worth noting that while the fire is on the ground, it will do damage to you. It is much like other flying monsters though, ideally landing a stun to knock it out of the air while carefully avoiding attacks. I hope this hammer guide was helpful for you. This took a lot longer than I thought it would, but I wanted to give as much information as I could. If you did find it helpful, a really easy way to help me out is giving this video a like, subscribing to the channel, or even sharing the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, hunters. Take care.